everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a DIY Dollar Tree farmhouse autumn welcome sign, and it's a Hobby Lobby dupe. I saw this at Hobby Lobby originally for $20. It was on sale for $12, and I still really wanted to buy it, so this was the inspiration piece. And I said, let's just make it. So to make it easy for you guys, we're going to use these pumpkins. We're going to use 2 packs. We're also going to use a piece of black foam board from the Dollar Tree. All of these items are from the Dollar Tree, actually. We're going to make the frame out of some Jenga type tumbling tower building blocks, as well as some craft sticks. I just tried to find an easy way to make a nice thick frame for you guys. And we're also going to use a glue gun with Gorilla Glue hot sticks. This is my favorite. So the first thing we have to do is decide how we're going to spell welcome. Oh, and we're going to use the poster stickers, the black vinyl poster stickers, and some paint. So the first thing we have to decide is how many letters we need. So the word welcome has 7 letters. Yes, it does. I'm pretty sure. So we need to paint 7 of these pumpkins white. The reason we paint them white first, I found it easier to paint it with a base coat of, this is just white chalk paint, but any white paint will be good, just to help the pastels really be more vibrant. That sounds weird because they're pastels, but just to make the paint not get an off-white undertone. That's what I mean to say. Now the inspiration piece was like a sticker, like, it was like painted on or printed. It was not 3-dimensional like we're going to make here, but it did have a 3-dimensional painting style. So I thought I could do is, if we could make these pumpkins and actually layer them, then you guys would have like an easier way to get the same look without doing a whole bunch of different painting techniques of creating shadows and kind of thing. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm painting all of them on one flat side and all the edges. This is a very long process, but really all the steps are really quite simple. And at the end, I think it makes the most elegant looking $3 project that I think I've done. Actually, it's $3.50 because we used 7 of the wood pumpkins that I really have done in a very long time. Now we also are going to embellish with paint, and I decided to throw in a couple of the little fabric leaves. Some were from the Dollar Tree, but some were from the Dollar General. The Dollar General leaves were a little smaller last year than any leaves that I found at the Dollar Tree. So we're going to use a combination of those. But you can skip that step if you want to. And I'm going to kind of like stop at each end to show you what we're doing. So for this first pumpkin, we created this really pretty pale seafoam green, sort of like teal color. I basically had some white chalk paint. I added some water to it. It was the end of the bottle. And then I added a little bit of Spanish moss and a little bit of midnight blue from Spanish moss chalk paint, and a little bit of midnight blue from apple barrel, just to create a shade that I like. And then I created a darker version of it over on the right for shading. So basically what I did is I coated the whole pumpkin with the color of whatever we're going to do. And then if you notice, the pumpkin's bottom and has these natural edges, you can kind of see where the indents are, the little dimples are. So I just continued that circle around. Basically it's like an oval. So we just continued that oval around with the paint. And while the paint is still wet, your base coat is still wet, it blends so nicely. So what I did was I created shadows. And how I did it was, so if you're looking at the oval, actually we're looking at the oval upside down. So if I created a shadow on the left side of the oval, it would be, say that it was on the inside of the oval. And then the shadow on the right side of the oval was going to be on the outside of the oval. And the reason we do that is because if the light was coming from one source on the side, that's how it would cast a shadow. That's all. I just found it a little bit easier to explain it that way. Hopefully you guys noticed. Then I went back over with the fine point, dark straight color, and I kind of tried to make the lines that accentuate the creases in the pumpkin. All right. And I also painted the tips, the stems, the same color, but we're going to change them later. But you can go ahead and paint them the same color, and then I'll show you in stages. You can decide how you want your pumpkins to look. And now I created two in an orange tone. This is basically, I took white paint and added a couple of drops of orange to it, mixed it, decided I wanted a little deeper, added a couple of more drops. It's the best way to do it. Darken it slowly. Always start with your light color to darken it. And then I took some straight orange to create the shadows and the lines. And basically repeated the same process. If I, took the light from the same source, if I did it on one pumpkin, I did it on all the pumpkins, because if these were actually three-dimensional pumpkins that you were taking a photograph of, you would only have one light source normally, coming from like one side. Okay? And I created two oranges, excuse me, two green ones, and then the last three are going to be white. And basically with the white, this is where you're going to see me up close. Do a little bit slower of painting the orange and then the shadows and the highlights and stuff. So I'm continuing that oval around, and like I said, I'm creating the shadow on the inside of the oval on one side and the outside of the oval on the other side. And then the two additional ridges that I added on the other sides of the oval, I did them as well. So then I took a dark straight color, and on the right side, I put the dark edge on the right side of that shadow, and on the other edge, I did the dark edge on the right side of the shadow, but one would be inside of the circle, one would be outside of the circle. Does that make sense? Hopefully you guys see what I'm doing. I feel like one day we're just going to actually have to have, like, this is how you paint perspective and shadows on a pumpkin, or not even a pumpkin, on a figure 101. Maybe we will do that. If you guys are interested in a more in-depth painting tutorial of shadows and highlights, go ahead and leave in the description box down below. I will do my very best to teach you everything that I know. Now we're going to create a gray. So the other two pumpkins, we're just going to leave white, and we're going to create their shadows and not highlights, but their shadows and creases with gray and black. This is Waverly's chalk paint and ink. I just added to all of that peach colored paint that we had left over. Waste not, want not, right? I scraped it all up with a scraper just to put it together. If I had a palette knife out, it's the same thing as like using a palette knife. So, and I did lose footage of me painting all of these white pumpkins with their shadows, but just go back with any highlights, with any solid white that you need afterwards. So next day, you let them all dry. This is what they look like. Now I'm just playing around with the colors, which of the green ones that I liked the best, where I wanted them situated, how I wanted them overlapped. I referred to the inspiration piece a lot because the inspiration piece had pumpkins looking like they were in the foreground and background. They were like layered on top of each other, and I wanted to create that similar feel. I also didn't want all the stems going in the same direction. I know that sounds weird, but initially when I painted the fronts, I made sure of that. But now I'm just taking one sheet of stickers. Now this can all be spelled out. Welcome be spelled out with one sheet of stickers, but I like to finish the ones that I had started, and I had most of the letters in just one sheet. But I just made sure that as I placed one, centered the W basically, then I took the next pumpkin, put it next to it, so I could kind of get the E lined up on the bottom. And I just repeated that for all of the letters. Oddly enough, both E's ended up being on white pumpkins, which was so weird. But I ended up picking green, white, peach, white, green, no, green, green, white, peach, white, green, peach, white. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay, set them aside. Now it's time to cut your foam board. This foam board comes in a almost 30-inch width. It's like 20 inches by 30 inches, or 22 inches by 30 inches, 20 inches by 30 inches, I'm sorry. But we're just going to use its natural length, and we're just going to cut 6 inches. So it's going to be 6 inches by 30 inches. And it was really difficult to do this on camera in my little tiny work table. So I have it like shooting up on all the stuff. So basically I'm using a white chalk marker because it shows up on the black board, but you could just use a pencil. That's not necessary. And I kind of gave it a rough cut because we're going to glue this behind a frame. So it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you want it to be minimum that size, because that's what size the opening is going to be. Well, the opening is going to be like 5 3/4 by 30. So, okay, now it's time to make the frame. Now, again, this is a very easy process that just takes a little bit of time. What I've done is I've taken my square. The square is from the Dollar Tree. My metal ruler is not, but they do sell a metal ruler now. And the frame for this thing is going to be 16 Jenga blocks across and 3 on the short sides. So what I'm doing is I'm taking 5 or 6 at a time, depending on which section I'm ready to do, because it's basically 5, 5, and 6. I've laid them down with, I kind of tried to match the wood, so I didn't want it to be like super grainy. I didn't want you to flip it over and see that you could really tell that it was pieces. So what I did was I looked at it, matched a nice side, put it face down into the square, and then I took a bunch of hot glue and laid a popsicle stick over it. The popsicle sticks I cut at 5¼ inches, and I used my square for that as well, and then I just used one to cut the rest. After I glued them all, I made 2 sides and 2 short sides. Like I said, 3 on the short sides and 16 on the long sides. I went ahead and I trimmed out any of the popsicle stick that were hanging over. Now, these aren't popsicle sticks. I keep calling them that. But they're sort of like the tongue depressor kinds that are a little bit wider and a little bit fatter. So what we're doing is we're going to now create a little piece of, I'm going to take a little piece of that popsicle stick and we're going to create supports for the corners. So once I have both long pieces done and both short pieces done, I'm using the square to square up the corner of the frame. It's very simple. Then I'm going to use some hot glue and a short piece of the tongue depressor, and I'm going to lay it across the corner where the side meets the top. The sides go between the 2 top piece and bottom piece. Okay, it doesn't go the other way. I kind of did it on to show you like not to do it there a minute ago. And you're going to repeat this for both sides and all 4 corners. And then this Gorilla Glue works. I don't glue between the Jenga blocks because then it kind of leaves too much of a big space, but I'm just using the popsicle stick to hold them all together. And it is actually really strong. But I will tell you that I ended up having to piece some together, like 6 Jenga blocks fits 2 popsicle sticks perfectly, so I ended up having to piece some together. But anytime you do that, just butt them up next to each other in the square and add a popsicle stick across the bridge to bridge your gap, basically. Now when I have all 4 sides done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue my board onto the back. This board is bowed in one direction because kind of from shipping. So I made sure that the bow was to my advantage. I pushed the bow down onto the frame. I turned the frame over, I glued across one corner, lined it up, laid it down, and then worked my glue under all the other 3 sides, and then basically added like a little extra. It's not going to be supported by the foam board, so it's okay. You just want to make sure it stays there and doesn't fall off the back. That's pretty much it. Then we're going to turn it over, we're going to insert the letters. Now we are going to eventually paint this frame, but I wanted to show you in stages in case you don't want it painted, in case you just want natural wood. The Hobby Lobby had other ones like this that had white backgrounds, darker frames, and more brightly colored pumpkins. Of course, I wanted to go with this style, so that's why I went with this style. So now I've lined up my letters, and I want to space them evenly on the left and the right. So I just used like a little piece of scrap material that I had just to eyeball that I had the same space between the right side and the left side. I decided if I wanted what letter to be on top of which letter. That was my own choice. You guys choose what you want. The W ended up being on top of the E. So what I did was I broke off a little piece of popsicle stick to put under the left side of the W just to give it balance, so it would be straight across and not have to be at an angle. And then I went straight across, kept the ups and downs and the tops and the bottoms. And basically, once you have it lined up, all you have to do is tilt the pumpkin back, add the glue, and then lay it back down where it was. And you won't have to worry about readjusting your placement. So that's how it looked, just that way. And now we're going to add some finishing touches. So for the next finishing touches, I'm going to take some of the Waverly chalk paint in truffle, and I've gone over all the stems, and I'm going to create them brown, and then I'm going to actually extend them. This is a fine point paintbrush. I'm trying to fill in all of the little holes for the hangers, which actually worked pretty good after 2 coats of paint. And then I created some longer stems because if you noticed in the beginning, the inspiration piece, it did have all these painted stems. I also took my ultra fine point paintbrush and I created some of the tendrils that you see often on pumpkins. I love the look of the inspiration piece that had tendrils and twisty stems and leaves and stuff. So I really wanted to emulate that the best I could. So first we're just going to lay down the truffle, and we're going to do this to all the pumpkins. Of course you want to make your stems go in opposite directions, but go with the natural flow of the stem that's actually on the wood already. Okay, so I know we talked before, we painted them the same color as their pumpkins, but now we're going to go over everything and just make them a little different. Okay, now I'm going to create this for all 7 pumpkins. I've tried to make them different, which is kind of important, and I tried to make some tendrils on the backboard, some tendrils down the front of the pumpkins. Some have 2, some have 3, some only have 1, type of thing. Just mix it up. All right, and as far as how the pumpkin attaches to the stem, some go to the point, and then some we accentuated that roundness at the top by making the stem sort of go off in an angle. Okay. So once we're done with all that, I've taken some Waverly chalk paint and ivory, and I'm just going to add highlights and textures to the stems. I'm also going to do highlight any tendrils. As the tendrils cross over each other, I created a highlight on there so that you can see that there's dimension in them. But for the pumpkin stems, all I did was I just added a few thin lines just to create sort of a highlight of the dimension of what, like a real rustic looking pumpkin stem would be. Okay, now that I've done that with all of the pumpkins, I went ahead and I took some of this exact same paint, this Waverly chalk paint and ivory, and I used a foam brush. And I used a foam brush. What I did was I rubbed the paint on pretty forcefully left and right, holding the paintbrush sort of fine, but I went straight across the front, and then I went back over it and I dry brushed off, basically took some of the paint off. The reason we did this is because this fills in any of the cracks between the Jenga blocks. If they're not filed perfectly, which they're not always from the factory, they're not always the same size. But going back and forth left to right will fill in the cracks, and then you brush it off like dry brushing. And I just did the very front top. I didn't do the sides, the inside, or the top, like the outsides or the insides. I just did that very first side that you see. Okay, now we're going to add some of the leaves. Now this is also another option. I'm trying to show you them in stages in case you don't want to do any of the embellishments. But I thought that the smaller leaves looked nice, and at first I was like, oh, these are too big, but then when I went back to the inspiration piece, it does have quite big leaves on it. So I was able to just keep going, and I found ones that I loved, and I layered some of them with the colors, and I tried to keep the colors more muted. I didn't get any really loud oranges or anything because that's not really where I was headed with it. And then just layered them and put them haphazardly, sporadic all over the place. Added just a tiny bit of hot glue, but I took it a step further than the inspiration piece, and I took my leaves and I actually kind of layered them over the frames a little bit here and there, and I really do like that effect and how that came out. But you can stick with the inspiration if you want to, or you can go ahead and add as little or as many leaves as you want. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make 2 noose jute hangers, one for each side, and they're going to be glued onto the side pieces, okay? So what I've done is I've taken my ruler as a measurement. I've just butted my ruler up against the long edge. I've taken the tip of the jute hanger, basically where the nail would go, and I've lined that up to the ruler and then glued the knot. And that's it. I know it was a lot. I know it was difficult. I mean, it wasn't difficult, but it was a lot of steps. Hopefully you guys got to see everything and understand what was going on. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. If you do, give this video a thumbs up. If you have any questions at all, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. Don't forget to share with friends and family. Anybody you know might be interested in making one of these dupes from Hobby Lobby. And if you haven't yet, click subscribe. When you do, a little bell will pop up. When you ring that bell, YouTube will let you know whenever I upload a new video. And as always, you take care, God bless, and we'll see you next time. Bye!